Good morning, Stefan.
Good morning, Jamie.
Hey, how are you?
I am very well, thank you.
Awesome.
How are
Awesome. And
you?
likewise, I'm also very well. Thank you for asking. I had a double mug of coffee today.
I got a single mug of bone broth.
All right. Always
we
playing
got
it healthy.
we got our bevies.
Mm, wow. So it feels like it's been 2 weeks since we last talked, but we had kind of an offset schedule with my travels, huh?
Yeah, it. I don't even have a concept of time anymore.
I know,
Really.
I feel like, I mean, I've had work project stuff, so I have more of a sense of like days right now, and I have kid pickups and drives and all these things, but like it's interesting because for the first time in a long time I have orientation of days, where prior to this last week it's all just blurred together. Like, I don't know what's what. But yeah, this week I've had, okay, it's Monday. This is what I've got to do today. But no day is like the previous day. So it's always like, okay, I have to look at what's up, what's coming up, and make sure I'm ready for it. But I kind of do it on the fly. I'm not really great at planning too far in advance.
I try to be on a need to know basis with myself, and I don't really. I just, whatever's coming up, I deal with.
Yeah.
And it seems like I'm busier than ever, but I'm sure there are many people who would dispute that.
That is something, that's a great theme, actually, just in terms of like, I don't feel all that busy. I mean, I think if I list out what I'm doing, I sound like I'm, like all doing so many things, but I don't feel like I'm working at an accelerated level or, fast but like, yeah, if you list it all out, it sounds like a lot, but it's really like, this is a good pace for me. I don't know.
Yeah, when the goal is to have free time and unconstructed time, everything seems like an imposition or uh, or just something to do that I don't necessarily care about so much.
Yeah.
There are so many things. My priorities have changed quite a bit, and every little thing is questioned as to, not every little thing, but I question the things that I do as to, do I really care about this?
Yeah.
Is this necessary? What are the things that I am most curious about? What am I most excited about? What do I really care about?
And it's interesting though, but weighing things out like that, I think allows you to sort of throttle it up and back, right? Like for me, I found myself in a place of almost too much space for my own liking, or my own, capability to navigate it if it's this time maybe, but like I just felt like I wanted more going on. Like I wanted to start saying yes. I had gotten really good at saying no to things. Like that's not a problem. Like I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, be sure to say no. And I'm like, well, yeah, I did that like a decade ago. I was really, that was my practice then. Now it's mindful yeses, right? Like it's the yeses of the things that I genuinely do want more of in my life, at least for now, until I don't. And so curating those things has brought a lot of activity back into my life, but it's very welcome. I'm very excited about all the various little plates that are spinning right now. And I like that. And this goes back to like that first line of like busy, right? Like how many times do people approach you with, I know you're busy, but they start the sentence that way. And like for the last 10 years, people approach me that way. I know you're busy, but can I ask you this, or can I pick your brain, or whatever it is? And like my mind immediately goes to, I'm not that busy. Like I never say it out loud, but in my mind, I'm like, I'm actually not that busy. I've designed my life to not be that busy. Like I'm not like, oh, I'm so busy. I'm so busy. You know, there are moments that happen that where things culminate sometimes beyond my control. And I am actually busy, but
yeah, well, that's a disclaimer that people offer so
Mm.
that they don't have to, they don't have to feel bad when they get rejected.
is that what it is? I mean,
Well,
I know you're busy, but
I know you're busy. It's like I'm giving myself credit for honoring your time, but I'm going to interrupt you. I'm going to I'm going to spontaneously interrupt you because it's about me, and but I want to acknowledge that I know you're busy. So if you say no, you have an excuse, right? You have an excuse that you're busy, right? They're offering an excuse for you so that they're not disappointed.
Just in case. It is it's an interesting thing. It's sort of, it's sort of parallel to like when you start an email or a conversation. I wanted to ask you, but you are asking, you're in the process of asking. I just think there are these funny little things that we have picked up as like in humanity, like these funny little things that we repeat without really thinking about what we're saying and why we're saying it. And we've talked about that a little bit before, but those are two of them. It's like, I wanted to ask you, well, yeah, I did at one point, but now I'm actually in the process. I don't really need to preface it with I wanted to. Like, hey, Stefan, how's your day? Oh, I wanted to ask you how your day is going.
Well,
there's really no need for that part. Yeah.
Just do it.
Here we are. Let's economize.
First of all, yeah, I want credit. I want credit for thinking of this first, and then I want credit for doing it. And if I don't do it, I still want credit for thinking of it.
It's a bizarre little ritual that I feel like has developed.
Yeah.
An unnecessary one.
It's an extension of, oh, I was thinking of going to the market to get you some flowers, but I got stuck in traffic. So here I am.
So yeah. Why even add that? Yeah, that's so funny.
Well, because I want credit for thinking that I was going to get you. I thought that I was going to get you flowers.
That's so
funny.
I
still want credit. I still want credit for it.
No.
We all want credit. Everybody wants.
There's a level of acknowledgement and yeah, I don't know. And I think that's where like the I'm so busy came from. Like the roots of that was, the appearance of busy meant something, like you were important at some point in time, I think.
Yes.
I remember very clearly when the awareness of people who were really busy, I was like, I don't want that in my life. That's not who I want to be. And like, I feel like the more, like professional and financial success I've had, actually the less busy I've become. And and I find that, like I'm exactly as busy as I want to be.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's something to it. I find that funny though, like I'm so busy. Well, you're really bad at managing your time, is my assessment.
Well, again, these are frameworks people set up for themselves to avoid responsibility for creating their inner life, right? For enjoying or, as you say, designing your life.
Yeah.
People, the language is, oh man, my day was so crazy, right?
Yep, always.
Which is the generic blanket for I'm not responsible for anything that happened during my entire day.
Yeah.
I am just a victim. I am just a victim of fate. And then you can go on using that, my day was crazy, or it was nuts. Today was nuts.
Or bananas is my favorite one. Like, cause I use bananas all the time. And it is so here, let's tease this out a little, because there are days. There are days, but here's the thing too, is I'm saying days, but what I really mean is moments throughout, it's like sprinkled in a day. Like I don't say, like when three things kind of bombard me out of the blue, which happens, right? Like the other day I got an email about an IP infraction because I had to deal with that, right? Intellectual property thing. And like, so like things come unexpectedly into your path, and some of them need to be dealt with. And so that might interfere with like three things that you already had on the schedule and plotted out for your day, but maybe you never get to those three things because three new things like, come in and need more immediate attention. And I think that that's fair. And I acknowledge that those things happen. But at the same time, like, I don't necessarily call that my whole day was bananas, but like some very unscheduled things plotted their way into my day. And we navigated it. We figured it out. Like, but it doesn't affect the whole day necessarily. Like, I don't think of it in terms of my whole day was bananas. It was just like, wow, the morning started off a little shaky, but, or whatever. But now we got it. We got it back into
Yeah. Well, that's the entirety of life is, right? I mean, the real world is is beautifully chaotic and organized at the same time.
Yeah.
Right. It is the reason there are infinite possibilities.
Yeah.
Because of all the variety, the chaos, the mystery allows for all these possibilities. It's only the illusions we create in our mind that we think that we have it organized, but really we are swimming in a river, and you can get out of the river and imagine that you're controlling the river, right? You can stop, check out. But if we are engaged in life, we are in a river and it's moving.
Yeah.
Picking out stuff along the way and seeing different sights and sounds, and people are swimming by us. And it's all about the frequency and the movement and the progress of being in the river of life. I mean, if we use that as a metaphor, and there's
I love that. I love that. I've got so many things like popping through. Sorry, I'll let you finish.
Well, there's rarely a moment. All that we control is let's say, our attitude in the river. How we organize, right? Like our attitude in the river, what direction we happen to be looking.
Yeah.
Or are we staying underwater and going, fuck it, I'm in the river, I don't want to do any of this, and right. I can't see this, or I'm people say I'm drowning. Right?
I'm overwhelmed.
Well, just tread water for a moment and look around and see what's there.
And that's something minimally that we've talked about like many times too, is like, are you swimming upstream or are you going downstream, or that even that like underwater, or like, I think I used my term of lifting my head above the crowd, so to speak, so that you have a different perspective or a different outlook on what's going on around you and below you and above, all around. But I do like that analogy of the river. You used the word engaged, and that really struck one with me, because that is something I'm very focused on right now. So the role that I'm doing in my work life is training and development, like leadership training and development for a pretty large team for the Americas. So the Americas, which it covers for this company that I'm working with, they have Austin, Texas, San Francisco, California, Las Vegas, and Mexico City, Mexico. And so the Americas is about 200 people. And I've been thinking about engagement, right? Like, because I was listening to sort of like a HR perspective of what it means to be engaged in your work. And I kept thinking, well, it's a little different than what being engaged at work means to me. And it made me wonder, like, how that varies for different individuals. What does it mean to you to be engaged, right? And you talked about being engaged with our travel through this world, basically through this life and this experience that we are existing within. And I think about the word engaged. I've been really pondering that word. I don't know.
So what was in your estimation, what's the primary difference between, or what are the differences between the version of engaged that you subscribe to and what you were reading in the HR literature?
Yeah. So I think often they're trying to, companies, let's just talk in general terms of companies. In terms of keeping their employees engaged, they often want to offer activities and things that go on beyond the scope of your daily job, things that will humanize teams, which I think is beautiful in a lot of ways, right? Humanize the people rather than you're just a role, you're a human in a role doing a job, and we work together toward a common goal. So I think that there's like a big picture of engagement, and I do think that that's great. But for me individually, being engaged is really about aligning with the values of a company, driving toward a same mission in that way. Like, hey, we are all moving toward the same goal, and I'm self-checking my values that they're still aligned with the company's values, right? Because sometimes there's a departure, and we can digress on that in a minute. But so for me, it's a values alignment, but then something that keeps me engaged is allowing me autonomy. Like, I want to own my time. And even though you're paying me to do a role, which technically in some ways, I guess, belongs to this time belongs to the company, maybe we could look at it that way. But my ability to get the job done with autonomy, with some control over my life and my schedule, that's what keeps me engaged in a role. As soon as I feel like you control my time, I start to check out. And, like, just tell me what needs to be done. Tell me when it needs to be done by. I will get it done. But don't monitor my hours. I don't want to be sitting at a desk from 9 to 5, feeling like I have to, be present, presenteeism, right? And like, that's where I feel like some people's perspective of engaged is this presentness versus just getting the job done, right? Like, I don't know if that was a very clear separation of my view versus what I think their view is.
I think I think there's definitely two viewpoints, right? There's the employer's viewpoint, and then there's the employee's viewpoint.
Yeah.
And the version of engaged I'm hearing that belongs to you sounds like what brings me joy is having creative freedom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right?
very much.
Because people are hiring you to exercise your creative skill. And that creative freedom and skill comes at a price, which means that the reason they're hiring you is because you have a certain way of doing it.
Yeah.
Right. And that gives you a certain result. And if they try to change or prescribe the way you do it, you're going to get a different result.
It's very true. Yeah, I think that's it. That hits the nail on the head. It's like I need to understand the where they're at and how they're thinking. And I think that's always a part of getting to know any new team, any new project that I take on. There's always this sort of like immersion. I'm calling it like 2 weeks of immersion and really getting my head into the space of where they exist, so I understand where I'm at, and in that, like, how I fit in and how I can navigate with where they operate. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, you're building trust, you're building an understanding, you're seeing how they operate, right? Like how you can get them to operate within their own creative space or their own creative capabilities. And I think though when I hear the word engagement, I don't really think it means anything from an HR standpoint, right? I just think it's a bullshit word because most people there isn't room there isn't room being made for joy and this kind of creative freedom in most jobs.
Mhm.
And this is why we have this whole, not that this is a new phenomenon, this kind of soft quitting phenomenon, but it's in the
Right.
news now. So everybody
Right.
wants to talk about it.
Yep.
And, as if it's something new. But right. But ultimately, it is, people are not finding joy in their work. People are not exercising the joy and trust and in their coworkers. There isn't any meaning that, and I think the meaning is the most important part, in that it's a company's job to create a mission that does have meaning.
Yeah.
But we all have our own personal meaning and mission in life. And so the way I think of a company is, what is the company's purpose? That is like
Mhm.
the overarching light, and it is the broadest, biggest, right? Our purpose is to make the world better through, make the world more fun through selling ice cream,
Right.
right? If we do a Ben and Jerry's, whatever kind of thing. But that's very big. That's a lot of light. That's a lot of, make the world, ultimately it's make the world fun. And then it's narrowed down. That's the purpose, make the world fun. Then it's narrowed down through selling ice cream or selling widgets or, making cartoons,
Flavors or whatever. Yeah.
whatever it is. So that narrows it down. So I think of the mission as the lens that focuses the light of the purpose. And so then you have the lens, it focuses, and then it spreads a beam out. And underneath that beam of light, there are tons of possibilities, tons of career paths. And at the bottom are all the little workers who's standing in that light. And can they look up through into that lens and see the light and see a path for themselves in
Yeah.
that company? Right. And the path starts with how the ultimate path starts with, how do I feel in this company? That's
Yeah.
where it starts.
Yeah.
So if that light, that purpose of the company doesn't shine a light on how that person feels at the bottom of this cone of light and this beautiful shining purpose, then there is no path for that person in the company. That person is only just doing stuff. And so it starts with how that person feels. And then it's like, how do I think about the tasks that are in front of me? Where are they leading me? They're leading me to larger goals. So we have objectives, which are time constrained in every company, but above are goals.
Mhm.
Like we want to slather the entirety of Chicago in our ice cream pops, right?
Right.
Whatever, right? These giant goals, but ultimately it's the company's job to explore, what is our mission, what can our mission illuminate that gets people to feel something at the bottom, through the haze of all the goals, all the objectives, and all the thoughts and tasks that are necessary to lead you to that ultimate mission and purpose. And if you don't create paths in the company that illuminate things that people want to feel way at the bottom of underneath that light, then there won't be engagement, there won't be good work, there won't be anything that really supports the mission. And this is the issue right now with all of the companies whose missions are shareholder driven,
Mhm. Yep.
right? Because it's like the if we look at a shareholder driven company, like let's say Boeing, because that's the most recent one, if the mission, if the purpose, right? Purpose is to maximize shareholder value. That is the light at the top, and then underneath is the lens that focuses this light, and it's make airplanes,
Mhm.
right? Make airplanes, and then that shines a bunch of string, and it's like, but if the light is maximize shareholder profits, then it is like do everything as cheaply as possible, pay your employees the least amount possible, don't overhire, outsource your uh, components, right?
Yeah.
So there's all these things that happen underneath, and then there's nothing shining the light on where do I find my joy in this
And
purpose, because
and
my
align with my
purpose,
personal values. Yeah.
right, it
Yeah.
has to align. And so my purpose does not include maximizing shareholder value for somebody I don't even know, for
Yeah.
some corporation or some hedge fund. So it makes the entire business very, very impersonal. And that's where we have things like air disasters, and because people didn't care about their work and people didn't have any kind of integrity when they knew something was broken, they just didn't care, because it was like, I'm not make Boeing's mission, let's say, used to be, we make the best, safest, most incredible airliners in the world. And they used to have signs in the buildings that say, we do it, something to the effect of, we do it together, right?
Yeah.
Together we
Yeah.
make these great planes. No longer, none of that exists anymore. Now it's completely, the culture has changed. Ask anybody, because we're in Seattle, let's say 1 out of 10 people works for or knows somebody that works for Boeing.
Yeah.
And everyone will tell you that what was once a really proud company is one where people just go to work and grind it out, because, well, not even now, the benefits aren't even good anymore. Right.
Oh, see, it's so heartbreaking too, because I do think, I don't know, through my own experiences, even it is possible to do work that feels purposeful and feels like you're actually doing something good. I mean, and when it doesn't, yeah, when it doesn't feel like that, like my personal values, often when I've joined a company in the past, right, it's because my values aligned with their values, or it felt like it did. And then at some point it seemed to change, and I don't know if it's I changed or they changed or leadership changed or whatever, kind of doesn't matter, but you feel a divergence in the value set. And for me, when I feel that divergence in the value set, it's time for me to go follow my values in a different direction. And it's led me in really good, down a really good path, I guess, or, through a very good and interesting path. But it's following the values, not following money or shareholder profits or whatever. Like, I'm just following my heart and my passion and my values more than either of those other things.
Well, and a lot of people don't believe they have that luxury, right? That is a huge
Yeah.
risk for people to take. And I feel like I have, I wouldn't even have called it value. For me, the word I've always used is, I've just followed my interest.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I thought about it even that far out. I just
Yeah.
thought what felt interesting, what felt right, I didn't even think about the values. But not that I didn't experience incredible value and joy, but I just didn't think about it that much. And maybe because I wasn't that intentional. But I think of our experience of working together. We were in a company that at the beginning, it was very catalytic.
Yeah.
And we did a great many very cool projects.
Yeah.
And the value that I adopted, or the feeling that I had, was that we were the best, that we could do anything, that we had the nerdiest of the nerds who could just pull anything off.
Yeah.
And they were fun to work with. And then it got to a point where the amount of energy coming into the company and the money changed or activated the founder's worst fears. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. I think that's a very accurate description.
Right. And so the
Yep.
founder's worst fears were activated. And then somehow the mission changed to, we got to save money. because we've been misspending money,
Yeah.
right? We've made bad now we've had a lot of money, but now we've made bad financial decisions. We're misspending money. We've overhired, and then we have people working on things that don't bring in money. So now our only mission is to reduce costs and bring in any kind of jobs, like take on crappy clients,
Yeah.
clients that we would have never taken on at the
Yep.
beginning.
You lose your ability to be selective when that happens. And that's actually, this ties back to many of the conversations we've had throughout these conversations, but about like, allowing yourself the freedom to choose and, being able to put yourself in maybe it's a financial position to have the luxury of choice. That for me, for so much of my early 20s, I did freelance work on the side of my day job to give myself exactly that. I don't think I've ever had a job where I didn't feel like I could walk away at any moment. And that has very much to do with how I was raised, and sucking away some pennies so that I had the freedom and the luxury of choice without feeling beholden to a paycheck, or staying somewhere because of the benefits or the pay, whatever. I've had that luxury because I worked for that. Like, I worked to keep that a priority in my life, um, that I could walk away when I need to.
I don't even think I was that intentional about it.
I
Like
always was.
I, I just always felt like I can walk away.
Yeah.
I would, without regard for where I was materially.
Yeah. Well, see, and
I,
that
it,
bar it varies. That bar
it,
varies for different people.
yes, yeah, and it's definitely different when we become parents, right?
Yeah,
The bar changes,
absolutely. And
right?
as my kids have gotten older, I've been able to I feel like drop the bar back down a little, where, although I have to say, when I left Zappos, for example, that was, I think on paper, a very stable job. I
Yes,
didn't fear for my role. They wanted to keep me. But when I left, it was because of autonomy of time. That was my main reason. I felt like I wasn't spending any time with my young children. I had a 1-year old and what she would have been 4 or 5. They're 4 years apart. So a 1-year old and a 5-year old when I left. And I left because I had been there for 2 years, and I'd leave at 7 a.m. and I'd get home at 7 p.m. Like that was my schedule. And it sucked. And, it didn't, the first year it was okay because I was building some stability. I had gone through a divorce, and that stability, I just needed some stability. Right. And once I
yes.
had that though, then I started to like go, what am I doing? Like, I don't own my time anymore. I don't see my kids. They're growing up without me, and I don't want that anymore. And that's where the role that brought us together, just, materialized kind of, in that moment of thinking like, this is not what I want. This is what I do want. And you put that out into the universe, and there it was,
And I would say, when knowing you at that time, when you came in to work with our little tech company, that you were by far the most productive, creative person because you gave yourself that time, right?
it
Because
was,
you were
yeah,
well,
yeah,
because you made a point that your wellness was a priority. And so you understood that the creative process is not about grinding. The creative process is about being present and then letting the creative process happen and then
yeah.
organizing it, right? Organizing it once the snow falls to the bottom of the snow globe, then you read the patterns in the snow.
Yeah. Yep.
But
We have to give
there's
it time to
period
fall.
there's a period in all creative endeavor that requires nothing go on but the settling of the components
Yeah.
in the creative ether.
Yeah, and that's what, it's so hard, I think, often from a business perspective for people to understand how that translates to time and hours. And it just doesn't work that way. And it's very hard. It's like, you got to understand the problem you're trying to solve and then let it marinate. And that's how you work through a host of viable solutions, and many unviable solutions. But yeah, you got to sort through and let it process. Your brain will solve the problem in a variety of ways if you give it time. But yeah, often, and yes, you can't just take a year to solve a problem, there are time constraints, and that's for financial reasons for sure. And also, if you just spend forever on one single problem, you're not going to ever solve anything. You got to force things along a little bit. But there is if you give yourself 3 days, it's like, okay, you have 3 days to let this marinate, something's going to happen. And often it's like the very last hour of those 3 days when, oh, bam, 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 all of a sudden you just spraying ideas. But those all took that time, that marination time to formulate. They may not have happened if you're like, oh, we have to decide this by the end of this meeting. It's like, no, it just doesn't work that way, man. It just doesn't work that way. But yeah, allowing the space, creating the space for creative soaking, if you will.
Well, also though, I will say that if you are well and present, that you can have a meeting and people can say, we need to decide this by the end of the meeting. Those things happen.
Mm-hmm.
But if everyone is present and well and collected, that you can use intuition based on your experience to make
Sure.
a really good decision.
It's true.
Right? I mean,
it is,
but it also requires that people are not harried before they meet in those moments, right? That they
yes,
are fully present so that we have all of our faculties in front of us. And again, these are the things, if your mission in your company doesn't illuminate those types of goals, you are left with a bunch of harried widget makers,
yeah,
basically.
yeah. It's interesting because even that sort of philosophy too is like how you show up very much impacts the energy that you put out, right? And I think about that with these calls that we have, these conversations. I think we had one week where I was really like, it was like what might have been closer to the end for my brain to really ignite. But most of the time, I feel like I am able to arrive in such an open and excited place. And one day my brain was just like not ignited for whatever reason, not harried, different. But like this morning, I was on my Ernie walk out in the open, just really feeling the air. And I love the flexibility. Thank you for that. I love the flexibility of like, oh, I need 10 minutes or I need 30 or whatever. And we figure it out. But yeah, that the brain, the mindset that you're in when you show up, how you show up. It's amazing how impactful that is on the energy you bring.
Yeah, because you don't have access to it if you are distracted.
Yeah.
Or in a hurry, or looking to the future, or worried about, or concerned about the past.
Yeah.
None of that.
It's so true. It's so true.
We don't have, and I think that's the lesson is if we don't give ourselves the moment, we don't even have access to all that is available to us.
Yeah.
Right? So we have to give ourselves the moment, and the business needs to include people giving themselves the space to be in the moment.
Yeah.
right? To just like, okay, let's forget about last week's efficiency report.
Yeah.
Right? It's just like the football coach going in. Okay, we lost 49-0. I want you to erase that game from your memory. And here's what we're going to focus on this week.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And we have these metaphors in sports and things like that. Just trying to do it one game at a time, where it's really a team effort, right? We have these things, but they get lost in business, right? They get lost in business when the purpose and the mission don't illuminate things that include human development and
Yeah.
include people's joy and presence in the business. And so that is the joy of this. And I find myself too, I have somebody wanting me to work on a proposal because I'm the only person who can do this particular part of the proposal. It happens to be Gantt charts because I'm the resident OmniPlan expert.
Thanks.
Right? And the OmniPlan has brought millions of dollars into manifested millions of dollars for the company we worked in together.
Yeah.
Because you and I and any number of other people would put a bunch of information and ideas together, and they would end up in an OmniPlan, and we'd go, here, look at this. This is how your project's going to go.
Yeah.
And they believed us.
And then
and
we
did it. And we did it. So
we
there
did.
was even more reason for them to believe us.
Yeah. Yep.
But that was like a frame. OmniPlan I love because it's a framework made visible.
Yeah.
And so then people can invest in it and they can believe in it and they can organize their time by it. That was an aside. That was
it's so.
The aside is I have somebody wanting me to do that. So my challenge is, and this proposal needs to get done by Sunday. So that's today. So my challenge is to clear my mind and be present while other people are having a fire drill, basically.
I love that you said that. It reminded me of my work way back. I used to do a lot of satellite media tour stuff. And for anybody unfamiliar with that, it's basically like I did production and grip work on the film and video side for news events. And news events broadcast stuff live to satellite media tours. So news outlets all over the world could pull down these feeds, right, from events. And so we did stuff like Comdex and what's the other, NAB, the broadcasters conference, and I don't know, Detroit Auto Show, stuff like that. And what I loved though is like I remember, so I was a college student, I was doing like grip work and $10 an hour. It was really cool to me, just getting experience and a few bucks, I always felt like the little calm seedling that I was in this world of craziness. Everyone was frazzled trying to make the, we've got 5 a.m. we're live or whatever. And we got like all this scrambling and people doing makeup and hair and getting cables run. And, it's just like this frantic chaos. And I was just there to help in any way that I could ease the stress off of anything that I could see that I could do to ease the stress of someone else's life. I would do it. And, even if it wasn't my job per se, like I was usually running tapes or picking up camera crews and dropping them off, driving in a minivan. I knew Vegas, so I could navigate the airport and convention center area like nobody's business and get these camera crews to where they needed to be on time. Anyway, it was just like but I was always just having a blast because I was not stressed out. Like, what was the worst thing that was going to happen to me? I wasn't stressed out. Yeah. I was like, I'm just here to help. Like, whatever, you be stressed. I'm here to help. So that was always my mindset in that though. And I felt like it actually, it took me far in that world. Like I did very well in that world, in such a different world. But I've often taken that lens, right, with me, is like,
Yes.
I'm just here to help. Like I have some talent or skill or expertise I can provide. And if that will help you, great, let's work together, let's do this.
Yes.
And I don't know, it makes my life a little easier and less stressful.
Well, you weren't believing in their framework, which is this is a crazy business that we're in, right? That
Yeah.
was one of the frameworks, is this
Yep.
is a crazy business, and this is wacky, or this is out of control, or we never get this
Nice.
right, whatever.
Yeah.
And we've probably talked about this before, but I worked in a restaurant at a hotel when my daughter was small, right? Because these were the utility jobs that we do, to whatever it takes.
Yep.
I'm just going to have a job so that I can feed my kid, take my
Yep.
kid to school.
Keep some shelter over their head.
So I was bartending and waiting tables at the Alexis Hotel, which had a very fancy restaurant called the Painted Table. And this was where the kind of Seattle cuisine and high-end Northwest wines, it was all pretty big at the time. It's even bigger now, but it was a big deal back then. And I got pulled off of waiting tables within just a few days, because the manager comes up to me and he's like, Stefan, I get the sense you don't have a sense of urgency.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you don't have the urgency. Yeah, and that's something that I do have that. I did have that. Because of my dad, I think it was always like go 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 go. So I did have like this sort of like, but to me it was fun.
Well, the thing is I could be very efficient.
Yeah.
But I wasn't running around like a wound up chihuahua,
Yeah.
which is kind of that was his style. He wanted
Yeah.
that style. He wanted people to be overly animated. And I was obviously just not that.
Pretty
I can
chill.
barely get the words out.
Yeah. No, I like your pace has always been very, I don't even know what the right word is, that like tranquil, like you are relaxing to be around, because you're just like, you are. And I do feel like that with Ken too. Ken is he operates at his own pace. It's completely impervious to the world, that what may be going on around, like you're able to just keep your rhythm.
Yeah.
And you keep your own beat. I guess that's a thing, right? The march to the beat of your own drummer.
I guess, yes. Well,
But yeah,
I think that's worth aspiring to, whatever.
yeah, it's with being around Ken in particular, because we live together and everything, but like hanging around Ken really caused me to recalibrate my pace, because I was always at a kind of like operating here like that. I think because of the way I was raised, very much like that was what I was taught, is the way that you function in the world. You hustle, go, always at 99 miles an hour. And I like the recalibration, and I needed the recalibration, I think, from my brain, and to understand that you don't have to. But that all happened, I remember, like during my Zappos era. That recalibration happened during that time, and it wasn't just Ken, but Ken was a great example of showing me that it could work at your own pace, and for me to see that. And then you came right in that same moment, like you were in my life, right? Overlap with Zappos, because that was where we first worked together. And yeah, like just seeing like, okay, like I can take it down a notch and actually, and I don't even know if that's the right word, but it's like step back and look at things from a different perspective. Even though I had done that in a different way before, the recalibration of my pace gave me more energy. And
Well,
yeah,
it's, and you are deciding what you want instead of doing what you've always done, which may
yeah,
have been unconscious,
yeah,
right?
very
Like
much so.
now it's like, well, now that is a framework that I have lived in.
Yep.
Is it the framework that I want?
And that is something that I think we should be revisiting often. And that's what these conversations have been for me again, right? Like at a different point in time in your life, you kind of like reassess things, you know? I don't know if it becomes a natural thing that you don't even think about, like I'm reassessing things. Like I feel like I have to vocalize it in order to actually do it right now. But I would love for it to be so natural that I don't even need to vocalize it.
Well, and that we are so present that we can recognize things that are new and different that might be beneficial,
Yeah,
right?
that's
What is the, oh, I'm gonna, I'm just gonna pop something open here
okay.
that is just an affirmation that that I will, that I enjoyed the last couple of days. And it's, let me turn, let's see. Let's see. I am grateful for all the joy, abundance, and love that finds me today.
Oh,
I am open, I receive, and I am ready. And that simple affirmation just requires that we are present and grateful. And then being open and ready means that we aren't necessarily binding ourselves to any particular framework, right? We
yep.
are, right? It is it, and that I think when you're talking about re-examining your framework or re-examining your goals, if we are just open and ready and grateful, then it is happening naturally,
Yeah.
right? Because you're just building on all the best things that you're standing on. Gratefulness is just a way of collecting milestones in our lives and then standing on that pile of accomplishments or great joys or feelings, and then continuing to look out to the horizon, right?
Yeah.
You're standing on that pile of grateful, standing on that pile of accomplishments, standing. But the thing is that they aren't, when you're that present, those things aren't pointing you in a direction anymore. You're just standing on them and you have a better view of the horizon.
That's
That's all it is.
that
And that's,
is yeah, you keep going. Sorry. I
well,
get so excited.
right. That's the being present is the ultimate hack, because then you are not bound to the accomplishments. You're not bound to the framework. You're standing on it or in it, or you are looking to the horizon. You're not looking at the framework or looking at your accomplishments. You're standing on them.
I love that. And I feel like that's something I'm still practicing, right? Like and I think we called this out a couple of weeks ago, right? Is like sometimes learning a thing doesn't mean you're like just good at it because you've learned it, right? You're aware of it and you understand it, but actually folding it into your natural behavior takes practice, at least for me. And it's interesting because a lot of the stuff that we've talked about, through the early parts of this conversation, our dialogues, I don't know, I've had some like moments where I'm like, man, I really went about that in a way I hope I never repeat. Like my expressing, I don't even know where to go with this one. Okay, so let's go back to a specific example of, I was expressing some frustration about a person who I felt had a lot of negativity, right? If I could go back in time, I would handle even expressing that differently. It doesn't even require the energy to express, oh, this is a frustration in my life, but rather you can acknowledge it super quickly and move on. And, and I think I had like a concert experience where, it was a confrontation at a concert, and it kind of, it was interesting because after we had our conversation, I was able to move through it quite quickly. And I only just, I mean, I think just saying it out loud now is the first time I've even thought of it since then. I haven't really even, it hasn't come back into my mind, which is interesting because often those things chip away and kind of gnaw at a piece of you, and you get like, oh, that really bothered me or whatever. But I feel like I'm learning how to, because I'm making space for joy and gratitude and deciding how I want to feel and what I want in my life, and the parts that feel right, I'm like, yeah, I want more of that. I'm going to keep taking more of that. And it really does naturally, as you called out many times, it kind of naturally moves out the negative pieces. There's no space for those anymore because I'm focusing on the things that are bringing me joy and bringing me great energy and making me excited to wake up in the morning and to choose the things that I decide to choose. It is the space for those things just goes away on its own. And I never realized that until you were kind of explaining it in that way for me.
Well, and that's still just a trick, right? That's still a trick to displace the things that we don't want in our lives. And it's a very effective trick. But ultimately, if we are totally present, none of that exists.
Yeah. Okay. So that's next level.
That's the ultimate, right? That's the ultimate freedom. None of that exists. We're not even attached to our future at that point. And that is let's say that's a very risky, scary spiritual place to be, because then we might not care about anything, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
If you're truly unattached.
Like
right.
we are. And I mean, in many of the spiritual practices, you practice detachment, right?
Yeah.
But the I guess the natural consequence of practicing detachment is that ultimately you would hope you are free. But there's the danger in, like, people think of detachment as pushing things away.
Right.
That's only giving them more energy.
Yeah.
But ultimately, the challenge is to be present. And then when we have access to all of our faculties, because they're not wrapped up in judgment about a previous moment or in judgment about a future moment.
Yeah.
Right. And
And
so that's very neutral.
Yeah.
But from that neutral place, we have access to all of creation ultimately.
I love, and I feel like an elementary school student in a lot of ways with this, but like, I do feel like, like I learn something, I'm aware of it, and then actually have to plot through it, right? Like I have to kind of go through this sequence of events that I don't even know what the sequence is. It just kind of works itself out. But I do feel like I'm working through these sequences almost, and to arrive at a place where that thinking is normal. And I'm coming from a place where I had frameworks, like some pretty like defined frameworks, but I love
very successful frameworks, right?
In a lot of ways.
They're not without value. They have incredible value.
Well, and that's the thing too, is like, I think clarity around frameworks that work, that help people move through maybe where they're might be stuck, right? Like I love sharing frameworks that have worked for me. I do have, we talked about our little that little book that I have, which is actually in my bag right now, but my little pocket guide to world domination, right? Like it's my little thing. I have these 6 steps that I work through. They can work out of sequence, they can work in sequence, but I have these 6 little things that I can go to anytime I'm feeling stuck, or I'm feeling, kind of closed off, or like my frameworks are too confined. And these 6 little things kind of crack the egg open and let me ooze up. It does, it lets me ooze naturally. And I need, because I do feel like um every once in a while the frameworks close around me and I don't realize it. I get kind of stuck not looking up and around and realizing that I've closed myself in with my own frameworks, and I need to crack them open again and break them down and start again. And so these 6 things that I do, yeah, I'll release that book
Well,
eventually,
I
but
don't even think I don't think you need to break them down at all. I don't think you need to look back at any of your frameworks as much as you just need to say, they got me here.
yep,
And now I'm standing on this mountain of frameworks. Some were successful, some were
yep.
not successful. But boy, can I really see a lot further, right?
I
I can
really
see a lot
can.
further, and I have more ideas about the potential that I can exercise. And if I'm really, for me, if I'm really present and grounded, I could say that I have no idea, no real idea
Yeah,
about the full extent of all that is possible, right? Because
which is so true.
it is, it is fairly infinite, were it not for all the frameworks that I have invested in my life,
It's true.
right? But
It's really true.
if I stand on top of that giant pile, I am still like a 16-year-old getting, thinking about, wow, I just traveled somewhere. I just did, I just did something new in my life. Everywhere, everything is new.
Yeah.
Everything is an exploration. That's still available to us. It's just that we have been, because of media and because of all of the electronic means we have now to extend our senses, what is really miraculous is becoming mundane for a lot of people. Like they're
Yeah.
ignoring that it is miraculous that we have phones that can communicate around the world, that you and I can have this
Yeah.
conversation. To this is enhancing our ability to be more, all
It
of this.
really is, and has, and I don't know, coming from maybe the generations we come from, where these things didn't exist in this way. I think when you're, yeah, with our youth, like this is normal for them. This is how it's always been. um and
I,
imagining a world without it is just weird.
yeah, I went to a friend of mine who I haven't seen in quite a while, but he's a motorcycling, climbing outdoors person, who's part of many circles that I know here in Seattle. And he's a very bright, energetic person, curious human being. And he just turned 50. And I thought, man, how young. I just thought, man, he's still like for me, 50 was just like getting started again. And now I feel like I'm getting started again.
Yeah, and for not to like dampen anything, I for a long time, so I'm 47 right now, and my mom passed away when she was 53. And for a while, for a couple of years, the closer that I get to 53, it gets a little daunting. Like I'm like, I'm
Oh,
going to probably outlive my own mom. That's such a weird thought to me. But
yes.
at the same time, now it's like a goal. Like I'm like, I'm gonna get there. But
Well,
like even okay, then in the same light, like I a lot of death reference here, but my older brother passed away when he was 15 and I was 11. And when my nephew, my sister, who is like, so my sister had our firstborn child, like amongst, in our family. So it's just she and I left, right? And
yeah.
she had my nephew, Liam, when he passed the age of 15, we were both just like, he's outlived our brother, our big brother, like, and what a jarring thought that
Yeah.
was. But also just like, I don't know, there's something about that. You talked about starting over or whatever. I think I reference these things in that mindset of like a starting point for me, a starting point that my mom never reached, beyond 53, but I think I'm gonna, just
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, the trauma of losing your family members, that is right. That is sets up a framework that that you didn't necessarily have any control over at the time you were a kid, right? There's
yeah, you
no way to process that
just
when
navigate
you're
it
a
the
kid.
best you can. Yeah.
To lose family members, there is no, and so that imposes a framework. And little did you know that that framework is a tiny little thread of dread that has been in your life
Yeah.
for that entire period until you uncover it and
Yep.
go, "Nah, I don't think so. I don't think I
Yeah,
want that thread in my life anymore."
exactly. And it's really very fresh that I've kind of let go of that as a, as a daunting thought. It is no longer a daunting thought to me. But it
Yeah.
was, I mean, even like last year, or maybe even as early as this year. But and maybe it's these conversations that have kind of unraveled that tangle for me. It's no longer a like, a wide-eyed, oh my gosh. It's just kind of like, okay, like, yep, I've acknowledged it, and now I live my life until I don't.
Well, I had a taste of that last night at this birthday celebration because because I'm a boomer, there are many of my friends that have passed away,
Yeah.
and there are many friends who have dealt with cancer and traumatic injuries in their lives. And so recently, a friend had a double mastectomy, and then we just found out that another friend of ours in the climbing community, her cancer has come back. And my one friend who has survived cancer now, went through chemo 3 years ago, said, I don't even want to know about it because I'm still in that period where they say if you get through 5 years, then you can kind of say you're cancer free. Right.
Yeah.
So there is a framework in the cancer industry
Yeah.
that everyone subscribes to, and it creates a thread of trauma and underlying worry in their lives until they reach that 5th year milestone, right?
Yeah.
It's not, it is one that the industry uses as a hedge
Yeah.
to counter, let's say, maybe even liability, but just as a hedge to not get people's expectations up. Yet what that does is it creates a threat of fear, a thread of fear and dread in everyday life, so that when you talk about cancer around someone who is a cancer, not yet a 5-year survivor,
Yeah.
it creates more dread.
You know, I have a friend who she's only, I want to say 6 months clear right now. So still very,
Mhm.
very much in the, but she was talking, and I love her so much. She was talking about how they recommend support groups and stuff like that. And she said she tried a couple, but she didn't want to return to those because it was very, very connected to something you said, where they support each other through their trauma. They're just building on, they're connecting through trauma. And she
Yes.
didn't want that. She wants a better outlook, and she wants more optimism and positivity, rather than just repeating the same conversations and hearing the same stories over and over again, because you're often put into, the support groups are people with similar types of cancer, so you can connect and relate over what you're going through. But she said, I can't exist there. I need
No,
to
it
be
just
in a,
reinforces that framework and
yeah,
these threads of dread.
yeah. And I loved hearing that outlook, because I had never really thought of it that way. I've never really done support groups or anything like that. In my own experience, I've had people recommend that with loss and grief and stuff, but it's never been my jam, I guess. Not to say that that isn't good for a lot of people. If it's your jam, like, I respect that. But for me, hearing my friend talk about that, I was actually very illuminated by hearing her say that, because it came right after you and I had talked about connecting. Some relationships are, you connect through trauma, but then your relationship, it doesn't always flourish, because that was the connecting point. And
Yeah.
so curating relationships with people on this other level, this level of inspiration and gratitude and hope and goals and ideas. Like, that's what I seek to build relationships around, not the negatives and the traumas of the past. And so, yeah, like, it's interesting. It's really opened up a mindfulness about it, that
Well,
is exciting for me.
this person, after her first round of cancer treatment, and just went and invested her energy in an entire new sport. She was a
I
rock
love
climber.
that.
She is a doctor of veterinary medicine, and she just fully invested herself in paddleboarding, like extreme, like
Yeah,
going to Hawaii and surfing a particular break that has a wind on it that will
I
take
love
you
that.
20 miles around an island, or, serious, um, serious badassery on a
Yeah,
paddleboard,
a really
and
great place to
lived
put your energy and your
right,
life.
because she could have sat around worrying about
Mhm.
where she's arrived at now, but she lived and is living every moment as brightly and openly as possible, and she has great support around her. So so I got to give her, I mean, I got to give her the high five for all of that,
Yeah,
because it's not only incredibly brave to face the cancer, but it, it was even more brave to just live an exuberant life in the face of that.
yeah. And
Right. That
it,
she made some very, very bold choices that the being a mom and all of these things, it's like, well, shouldn't you be doing this, or shouldn't you be, no, I'm just going to be just burning
exactly
it
what I
here.
want to
I'm
be.
going
Yeah,
to be enjoying I'm going to be enjoying this body and my physical abilities and my athletic skill. And
yeah, yeah. I like that a lot. And that's just such a great source of inspiration. Like, that's
yes,
an energy, like great energy, I like that a
yeah,
lot.
she's going to need it. She's going to need it, because there's a whole industry telling her that she is in stage 4 cancer, and that means a certain thing.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
everyone she meets in the industry is buying into, when that thing says stage 4 cancer, here are your chances, right?
Yeah.
And so you really, I mean, she will really need to pull in many different perspectives and believe in something different in order to, get the best chance at getting through this.
Yeah. Sorry, my headphones are funny today.
I saw this during the AIDS era in the late 80s, early 90s, and friends who had AIDS.
Yeah.
That because there was so little known about AIDS, and because it was a death sentence in most cases at the beginning, because there was so little known.
Yeah.
What I realized is that a lot of the pain and suffering of the AIDS era wasn't necessarily the disease. The biggest pain and suffering was the ostracization, the ostracizing
Yep.
of people with AIDS from normal society. Like
Yeah. It was
I
like,
had
oh,
friends who were living. I had a friend who was living in my household with AIDS, and I could, because of all of what was going on, I would question. It's like, do you hug this person? Do you, right? Do
yeah.
you, is this person, is it safe to even have this person in my household? Terrible things, until I got through all of those things. And then I just saw, oh my gosh, everything having to do with AIDS is about fear. Like
Yeah.
even the help groups, that my friend went to, they were all about terror and fear, and doctors telling them to do stuff that they didn't
Yeah.
even know would work. And they were so separate from society. I mean, one of my friends uh, was a professor from Greece. He had to leave his own country because he was a pariah. Once people knew that there were two things. One, that he was ostracized from his society and his community because he was gay. And then two, because he had AIDS. That was it. It was like he couldn't get fair treatment. Not that there was even good treatment in Greece. So he came to Seattle and became a professor at the University of Washington and did his thing there, and then would receive treatment here. But in that part of the world, AIDS was a perceived as a death sentence, and you were fully not included in society anymore. Like no one would deal with you. There was so much fear around it. And I just thought, I remember my friend Mark coming back from one of these, help sessions, one of these, let's meet up with a bunch of people who are going through this. And I listened to the story he told, and I go, oh man, the fear
Yeah.
is enough to kill you.
Yeah.
Just the fear and the terror that all of you are sharing is enough to kill someone.
Yeah.
And he did eventually pass of AIDS, as did the professor, as did a lot of people.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we know, and then people still are. But at least now, because of the treatments, people are living with it. And some people can actually be free, right? Like they can also, just like cancer, you can be
Yeah.
declared HIV free.
Yeah.
But this is again the power of frameworks, right? To pushing people even to death, or believing in their own death.
Yeah. This is wild stuff.
Yeah. I feel it really takes these sessions, it takes us a while to ramp up, and then once we get rolling, there's this point where it just goes up and we're really on it. And then we come back, and then there's this neutral, very sober, incredible place where I think where we are now, where we realize the immensity and the creative power we have as humans, right? To create. These are just thought patterns, right? These are just thought patterns and articulated beliefs that come out in words, yet they create societal norms that push people in and out of society and they create countries, and they create buildings and communities. and it's all arbitrary. It's all what people decide to believe in.
Yeah, it's very true.
Right. And those arbitrary collections of beliefs, these frameworks, they have the power to kill people.
Which is,
Just through fear, right? Just
yeah,
through fear and just the collective behaviors. I don't even know how to describe it, but I think we're both feeling the immensity of that right now.
absolutely.
Right? Like I feel it, and it's so incredible that people can put their brains together and create a cloud of beliefs. We could call it a cloud or an ether or a framework.
Mhm.
But in many cases, it's a cloud, and that cloud can just ruin somebody's
Yeah,
vision of their own life, right? You can put a cloud of beliefs around people with cancer or people with AIDS, and it impairs their ability to live a joyous life.
yeah. That's
And
a interesting. I like the use of the cloud though, because I do think it can impair the vision, yeah, of the bigger scope, of a bigger
yeah,
possibility, I guess, of actual possibility.
yeah. So what if we arrive in life and we decide, or we arrive at any given moment in life and we decide that I am, at this moment in time, I am going to let go of all my frameworks, of all my clouds of belief, of all my, what did we use? Clouds, frameworks.
It's frameworks,
At any rate, I'm
bubbles, circles.
I'm going to let go of all of that
Yep.
for the moment, and I am just going to arrive in this moment and be curious.
See, I love that too. The curiosity. Zia and I have to sneeze. I'm on the verge of a sneeze here. Hang
Uh,
on.
just mute.
I will
just
mute
mute.
if it
Just
comes.
mute for a moment.
Hoping that it passes here. Um, man, so Zia and I, my 13-year-old and I were talking last night because so she goes to it's a public school, but it's a magnet program within a public school, and it's
Yes, I'm
for the
familiar with
arts.
those.
And like I think that the program is regardless of how good the program is, there is a framework in the education system in the United States that, at least the public education framework, that is very limiting and very limited. And it's focused on a very, very narrow spectrum of conformity.
Mhm.
And Zia doesn't necessarily fit within that framework. And
No child
no
does.
child does. And that's the thing
Some
is
are
like,
just more compliant, right?
yeah,
But they don't really, it's not really a fit. They just happen to comply with the rules.
well, and that's like some people do comply better than others, right? And I feel like you and I both have related to this in the work world, right? It's like when as it relates to the framework of a job or an employer or whatever, right? I always have felt like school is just training for a 9 to 5 in a lot of ways, right? They're just trying to get you to get used to this programming. But I actually watched a TED talk. I can't remember the name, but I'll look it up and we can share it in the show notes perhaps. But um, of a guy who talked about how limiting the framework is and how like in Finland, this framework doesn't exist in the same way. And
Finland, yes.
there's no dropout rate. Like we talk about the dropout rate of students here in the States, and in Finland, it's zero. They're like, what dropout rate? What are you talking about? And, you know, because our
Yeah, because
United
this is
States
fun.
educators, yeah, because
This is designed for kids.
they engage them in humanities, in arts, in physical activity beyond math, science, and English, which is all we focus on here. And you know, like that's the narrow framework that their standardized test scores are based on: math, science, and English. And we're not all like there's more to it than that. And the guy, he had a great line. He's like, you know, we have this epidemic of ADHD, and he's like, I'm not saying that that's not a thing or it's not real, but most of these kids are just suffering from childhood. Like, they're kids, and if you put them in a room for 8 hours doing like menial level you know, admin work, yeah, they're going to be bored out of their minds. They're going to get fidgety, of course. Like, this isn't necessarily an attention deficit disorder. They weren't designed to do mediocre clerical work. They're designed
No, it
to
is.
play and
No,
explore and be curious. And that, when you said curious, like, that's everything. And I think the people whom I enjoy being around the most are the people who ask questions and want to, like, I wonder what makes that work. I wonder why it's that way. Let's find out. Let's go. And Ken, you know, on our walks, I wonder where that trail goes. And then we discover this entire new network of trails that we didn't even know existed. If we had not walked an extra 6 feet down a trail that we hadn't even really noticed. We saw it, but you know, whatever. One day we decide to go. What's over that little hill? And then you get to
yes.
the top of the hill and you're exposed to a whole new world.
Well,
Curiosity.
yes, and that is what gets us to being adults, right? Is following, like, children want to know what it's like to be an adult.
Yeah.
And so we can narrow their focus and make them become good clerical workers, or we can show them that the world is ultimately infinite and that they can follow their curiosity.
Yep.
Now, not everybody may have that luxury, but that is the way the world works, right? That is the way the world works. We arrive and we are innocent and we are curious. And it is our curiosity and the result of the loving people around us that feed us our worldview and our first frameworks. And so if those frameworks are narrow, then that's what we are. That's what we believe the world is. And
that's so true. And you know, if we believe our frameworks are bigger, sometimes, I mean, how many times have I gone back to that? Like, sometimes constraints are good because it gives you some direction to work with. Whereas if there's no framework, you are almost paralyzed by freedom. And
well, yeah, you
as
are
a
left.
kid, yeah.
Yes.
And I think sometimes as a kid, like, I as a parent, I'm learning, you know, I don't know everything, but like, I've left maybe my frameworks for parenting are too loose. I've left them too open. I've one that has defined her own framework very well and operates within it, and you know, that's getting bigger. But then I have one that yeah, maybe I need more
Well,
frameworks over here. I realize after the fact.
as a parent and observing you as a parent, I would say that you have built a world that is open and that your children have been able to exercise who they are in a really broad way. Unfortunately, the world, the rest of the world is not on your program or my program.
Yeah.
Right. The rest of the world is much more constrained, and there are well, we've talked about these things as well, but ultimately I am just left with, what if we could be as innocent as when we were children, yet standing on the mountain? We are standing on the mountain of joy and experience and knowledge and wisdom and milestones in our life. And we are looking all around us. We now have a 360-degree view. And what if we still had that sense of innocence and curiosity in our lives? Where would that lead us? What if we gave ourselves that incredible freedom again, without regard for material consequence, because we are already standing on a great pile of material accomplishment,
Yeah.
right?
I
So
love
those,
I love everything that you just said is rooted in curiosity and possibility. And I love that. I feel like that's exactly it. Like that's how I want to approach everything moving forward, like everything I want to make sure I'm checking myself on curiosity and possibility continually, and to grow in that and nourish that. Because it gets bogged down in frameworks often. Frameworks of the world, the frameworks of every day bog us down. They can. And we lose sight of curiosity and possibility, which should be feeding and fueling our growth and our progression and our movement and our expanse. Is that the closer?
I think so.
Oh, Stefan, it's been a really good conversation again. I feel like I tend to zipper around a lot. A lot of my mind is over here and over here and over here. But at the same time, like there's this root of again, curiosity, possibility. We talked about engagement today. We talked about man, a lot of stuff. And I don't know.
Yeah.
Again, I feel energized. And I think the reminder for me was curiosity and possibility, and not to forget, like, don't get locked into a framework. Like, even if I've been thinking about the word engagement or whatever, but like, even that is rooted in possibility, joy, curiosity, and it opens up everything. It opens so much potential.
Yeah. I don't think anybody would have a problem in the workplace if there was room for joy.
Yeah. There has to be
Right?
laughter and joy. Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
man. Well,
Not
with
just free
that,
lunch.
yeah, right. Which is a nice perk, but I used when
Yeah.
in my 20s, that was like one of my favorite things. I was like, free lunch? Are you kidding me? That blew my mind. I still get excited over free food, but yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
anyway. Thank you for your energy today.
Thank you for your presence and your energy and the gift of your time.
Likewise.
And we will return to this in a week.
Yeah, let's do it again. And then
Okie
we
doke.
can revisit our Tuesdays maybe.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Thank you, Stefan.
Thank you, Jamie. Cheers. And
Bye.
have a great Sunday.
You too.